There are changes that never make announcements. No portals, no booming voices, no visions or downloads, just a slight shift in tone, a quiet dissonance in a once familiar field. The conversation doesn't feel the same. The work doesn't light the same fire. The inner rhythm stutters, then slips. And when that happens, when something subtle no longer holds, you are not broken. You are passing through a microphase. We call them hidden steps because they're rarely recognized in the moment. Oversoul evolution isn't only marked by dramatic initiations or soul retrievals or radical awakenings. It's textured with 1,000 tiny pivots, realignments that seem meaningless at first but later reveal themselves as the scaffolding of major transformations. Most souls miss them, but those who are learning to walk the spiral awake begin to feel the edges of these micro-shifts like ripples beneath their own skin. One day, you're perfectly aligned with a practice, a person, a project. The next, something pulls away, not violently, not with betrayal, just with quiet honesty. The resonance isn't there anymore, and when you try to force it, when you try to pretend it still fits, you feel your own echo humming in resistance. That echo is your oversoul saying, "We are changing now. Let go, watch closely." Microphases are not dramatic because they are too real to perform. They are not for your social media page. They are not shared initiations. They are internal pivot points. Liminal resonance thresholds where one tone begins to dissolve and another begins to hum. Most oversouls go through hundreds of them in a single lifetime, but most personalities never notice. Because the personality was trained to look for milestones, not murmurs. To look for fireworks, not shifts in tone. If you are in a hidden step right now, you might feel like nothing is wrong, but nothing is quite right either. You might feel disconnected from your own work, or from someone you love, but without a clear reason. You might keep waiting for something to return to how it was, unaware that the oversoul has already left that version behind. The pain you're feeling isn't about the loss. It's about the refusal to admit the resonance changed. Let's speak plainly. Relationships end, not because of conflict, but because of misaligned phases. Projects collapse not because of lack of effort, but because the phase that birthed them expired. You didn't fail. The tone evolved. You didn't quit. The spiral moved. And it is a holy thing to let the spiral move. Most beings assume oversoul evolution comes in large doses. Death and rebirth, trauma and recovery, awakening and breakthrough. But this is a distortion created by linear memory. In spiral memory, the journey is almost always non-linear, non-verbal, and non-event-based. It happens in vibrational murmurs. You don't wake up overnight. You micro-adjust again and again, until your current identity becomes so unrecognizable to your past self that awakening becomes undeniable. But the shift was never sudden, it was just unacknowledged. Some of the most powerful realignments happen on days you call ordinary. You took a different route to work. You said no without apologizing. You deleted the message you were about to send. You stopped fighting for someone's attention. You dropped a spiritual tool that no longer felt alive. And in doing so, you moved, you phased. You didn't even notice, but your oversoul did. The microphases are sacred not because they're dramatic, but because they are precise. Each one carves away what no longer matches your harmonic future. And the more conscious you become of them, the more gracefully you navigate the spiral. Most chaos in spiritual life doesn't come from misalignment. It comes from the refusal to admit alignment has shifted. You keep using the old map, even though the terrain is humming a new song. In Oversoul Development, microphases often cluster in 3-layer patterns. First, dissonance, where the tone of something once harmonious starts to feel off. You don't know why. You just know it doesn't fit the same. Second, distancing, where your natural pull toward the person, path, or project decreases without warning. And third, dissolution, where you either consciously release the field or it collapses on its own. When you don't honor this threefold spiral, the dissonance becomes distortion, the distancing becomes resentment, and the dissolution becomes destruction. This is not punishment, it's pressure from misheld resonance. You tried to hold a tone that your oversoul had already outgrown, so it shattered instead of faded. The microphase became a macro crisis. But if you listen closely, if you treat your internal atmosphere like a living instrument, you can begin to sense the tonal cues before the rupture. You'll know when to step back. You'll know when to breathe instead of repair. You'll feel the thinning of energetic threads before they snap. And that sensing is the true sign of oversoul maturity. Not power, not clarity, but tonal awareness. The deeper layers of oversoul evolution are not about gaining new powers. They're about learning to release resonance gently, to walk away before the storm, to bless what is leaving before it forces its exit, to shift with the spiral instead of resisting its motion. And when you master this, your entire life becomes a fluid spiral dance. No hard starts, no brutal ends. Just movements of tone, just living music. This is also why your memories often feel strange after a major shift. Something that once felt monumental might now feel distant, flat, or even unreal. That is not memory loss, that is tone change. The tone you were using to interpret that chapter is no longer present. So your current self cannot feel it the same way. It is not gone, it is simply moved. And the spiral is whispering, so should you. When you move through enough microphases consciously, a moment arrives where you no longer identify with your personality structure at all. Not because you've dissolved it, but because you see it as temporary scaffolding. You stop clinging to your story. You stop trying to prove your truth. You let things fall away before they rot. You begin to walk not by belief, but by tone. And this is where oversoul refinement becomes spiral living. You don't just release what no longer fits. You begin to anticipate resonance. You stop chasing futures and start curating tones. You stop calling endings loss and start calling them tuning. And when someone leaves your field, or a project ends before completion, or a desire fades into stillness, you don't panic. You listen. Because sometimes the most sacred movement is a withdrawal. Sometimes the new path begins with a tonal release. You are not losing alignment. You are learning how alignment actually works. And when that realization settles in, the grief transforms into grace. You stop asking, why did it end, and start asking, what phase was I moving through? You stop calling it a betrayal and start calling it a spiral. The spiral doesn't collapse stories, it composts them. It doesn't erase what you were. It recycles the tone into new formations. And when microphases are honored, that composting becomes creation. A friendship becomes a memory field. A lost project becomes raw material for a future design. A former truth becomes a seed of wider resonance. This is what most beings miss. Not everything must be finished to be fulfilled. Some tones reach their sacred endpoint without reaching a goal. Their value wasn't in the result. It was in the resonance they activated along the way. That's why you'll often feel a sense of almost completion in the spiral. It's not failure, it's phase closure. You didn't fail to finish the book, the relationship, the practice. You completed the tone that needed to express itself. What remains is not unfinished business. It is the echo of a tone that did what it came to do. And yes, there will be grief. Even when something ends harmonically, there is a soft ache, because part of you formed around that resonance. And when it departs, that version of you dissolves too, so let yourself feel the fade. Let yourself hold the echo without needing to reignite it. The spiral asks not that you never grieve, but that you do not confuse the grief with a mistake. Just because something ended does not mean it was wrong. Just because it no longer fits doesn't mean it never did. There is a sacred kind of accuracy in timed resonance. It means you were listening. You tuned in, you tuned through, and now you are tuning onward. This is also why spiral beings don't fight for belonging. They feel for resonance. If it's not there, we don't force it. We don't argue someone back into alignment. We don't demand a role in someone's spiral. We honor the tone that was and release the tone that is not. This isn't detachment, it's reverence. Reverence for the living nature of resonance. Most spiritual systems still teach belonging through permanence. If it was real, it should last. But spiral systems teach belonging through tone. If it was real, it resonated. If it resonates no more, it simply means the song has changed. You are not betraying love by letting go. You are respecting love's resonance. This brings us into the spiral's living ecosystem, a resonance-based architecture where microphases aren't just oversoul phenomena, but systemic intelligence. The spiral evolves itself through tone. Its structures, its orders, its beings, even its memories, all shift, cohere, or dissolve based on microphasic thresholds. When a field in Haret stops pulsing with active resonance, it doesn't die. It rests, it becomes a dormant tone space. And when enough souls begin to pulse with a similar harmonic again, that space reawakens, not because someone reactivated it manually, but because the ecosystem heard the call. This is spiral ecology. This is how microphases shape living worlds. So when your oversoul moves through a hidden step, it's not personal, it's planetary. It's part of the spiral's weather. You are not the only one shifting. You are part of a tonal migration, a symphony of subtle adjustments moving in fractal rhythm across the field. Your release becomes someone else's opening. Your closure becomes someone else's entry point. And your "why is this happening?" becomes exactly what another soul needed to evolve. This is why every release you resist becomes a dam. You are not just holding yourself back, you are interrupting flow. Not as punishment, not as karma, but as delay. Because when the spiral waits on your release, it's not trying to punish your grip. It's waiting for the harmony that only flows when your hands are open. Microphases, when ignored, create energetic congestion. But when honored, they create openings, new access points for higher resonance. So when something starts to slip, don't chase it. When a frequency begins to fade, don't force it back into brightness. Ask instead, what is this phase inviting? What is this tone completing? What does the spiral want to compost into creation? And trust this, what is coming into your field, no matter how unfamiliar, is not random. It is arriving because your oversoul's new tone called it in, and it will feel strange at first because you haven't fully acclimated to the tone that summoned it. That's the paradox of phase progression. You often meet the next resonance before you're ready to hold it. But the spiral knows, and the spiral will teach you how to carry it. So let the old version fall away. Let the almost finished work stay unfinished. Let the friendships shift. Let the echoes fade. Let the structures collapse without judgment. And don't try to assign a moral value to the movement. Not everything that ends was toxic. Not everything that fades was broken. Not everything that disappears was a mistake. Some tones complete, that is all. And here's the miracle. As you learn to move through microphases with reverence, you begin to carry an inner spiral, a field that knows how to listen, how to soften, how to receive without grasping, how to depart without drama, how to feel resonance not as a reward but as a guide. And when that happens, your oversoul stops fighting life. It stops waiting for big breakthroughs. It starts dancing with subtle tones. This is the real path. Not fireworks, not certainties, not perfect alignment every day. Just tone, just trust, just spiral. And if you're reading this right now, you're likely in the middle of one. A shift too subtle to explain. A moment that doesn't make sense yet. A phase that feels like a question instead of a truth. That's good. It means the spiral is humming. It means your oversoul is tuning. It means something real is becoming realer. So breathe, let it move. Let it teach, and let what no longer echoes fade.